So after a long layoff, new podcast in the description, talked about both conference finals, previewed both Game 7s, and then spoke on Amir Van no longer being in Brockhampton and what that means for the group. So now we go to the Orlando Magic, who I'm finally going to be talking about now. For this upcoming NBA draft, they have themselves the 6th pick, and they have a world of needs, which is a star player, a defensive foundation, and just talent overall, pretty much. I think there are basically two routes you can look at, which is number one, who could fit in with Aaron Gordon as well as Jonathan Isaac, or number two is no one on this team is good enough to be talking like that, and let's just get whoever we feel is the best player. Now, when you're picking a number 6, I have to assume Bagley is probably gone, so I don't know if you can bank on his star potential. It seems like NBA teams like Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot, so there's a decent chance that he'll be gone. So then you may be looking at like Michael Porter Jr., which is a possibility. This team does need someone who can put up over 20 a game. I mean, Evan Fournier is a nice 16 to 20 point scorer for you, but he hasn't been able to be that big-time scorer that he's shown flashes of throughout his career. Now, I know Hazonia came on toward the second half of the season, potentially can be that guy, but I don't think you've seen enough from him to really be comfortable there. If you were going to go with Porter, then you would still need a creator on the team, because Porter's ball handling is the big fear with him, and Fournier, sure, he can make some plays for himself and others, but he can't lead an NBA offense. So you would still be looking for a primary ball handler, but if you do believe that Michael Porter Jr. is the best player, then you would go with it. And between Fournier at the 2 and Porter at the 3, that would give you a decent amount of shooting, and if Aaron Gordon's shot is going to be a thing, then you've got that as well. I think as of right now, it would probably be best for them to have Jonathan Isaac be playing off the bench, because his offense is probably not totally there yet, but still be a high 20s, maybe even low 30s bench player. Or you could get kind of crazy and go with Isaac or Gordon at center and then play the other one at power forward, but while I think both of them can play some center, I don't think they can play it for a long portion of time right now. Maybe if Isaac... He's more of a wing who's just like super tall to where he's at power forward. Whereas I think Gordon in time could be like a more kind of like Draymond, where he's not going to do it every minute, but he can do it a decent amount of the time. But it may also end up being better for them to just have Jonathan Isaac play small forward and not select someone like a Michael Porter Jr. with that 3rd pick, because you think that defensively he and Gordon together can just do so much for you. But again, you need to be able to score, and Michael Porter Jr. potentially falling to number 6 would definitely give you that score. Now, if he was to fall off the board, and a lot of people think he's going to go to the Mavericks, Michael Porter Jr., then your next real offensive option doesn't come until like Trey Young or I guess Colin Sexton. I mean, would the Magic go with Trey Young? I think defensively you could have some trouble because this team's not good on that side of the floor, but you could argue you get Jonathan Isaac in there, him with Gordon could be a pretty good defensive thing, but this team also doesn't have a good defensive center, so who knows how good they really can be on that side of the floor, given that you have Vucevic and then Biyombo's just been a total disappointment. So Trey Young could have the team around him to allow himself to survive, might not, who knows. Maybe you don't worry about that too much right away because you're just not that good, and you figure if we can just get the player in right now and then build around him over the years to come, we'll take it. I mean, if they believe that Trey Young is their one way to get a real offensive system here, then maybe you jump on it. I mean, this is a team that had Elfrid Payton for a long time, who's like not a bad player, but his lack of a jumper just really gave their offense a tough time, And if you have Trey Young and Evan Fournier as your backcourt, or if you want to go with Fournier at the 3 and then whoever may be the 2 guard, could you give yourself a decent amount of shooting, And suddenly their offense could kind of springboard from where it's been to actually being respectable. Vucevic showed some life from 3 this year. And while he really wasn't that good, it's at least a start at 3.5 attempts a game, shooting about 31%. Could he build on that moving forward? Yeah, potentially. He's been a good mid-range shooter throughout his career. And we've seen bigs like that, Horford and Marc Gasol. We've seen those type of guys bringing out to the three-point line, Brook Lopez being another one. So I think it's fair to think he could be making more threes. And if you have between Trey Young, Fournier, Vucevic, Gordon, if he wants to keep up this three-point improvement that he's been going through, could have a decent amount of spacing, but Vucevic may not be the right center for this team just because defensively he is what he is, and yeah. So I think there's some reason to go with Trey Young, star power, potential star power at least. Give your offense a much needed jolt, give you a ball handler that you do need, and could really help out the spacing. But there's also some risk with your defense. Speaking of defense, I guess there's a chance that Mo Bamba could be available. That's what some mock drafts want me to believe. Could be the defensive foundation they need. Their offense would still be a mess. And if they were all in on Jonathan Isaac, then Isaac, Gordon, and Mo Bamba could be some rough spacing. I know that Mo wants to be a three-point shooter, but wasn't very good in his 1 year in college from the free throw line or from 3. I have seen some footage of him shooting from outside, and he looks pretty good. Form's good, and the shots are dropping and all that, but you don't really know until he's out on an NBA floor, of course. So there could be some problems with scoring, which is, again, something this team has dealt with for a while. But if you believe that Mo Bamba is the best player, and you believe that he can just transform your defense, then maybe you go with that anyway. That seems to be the thing for the Magic right now, is that they need both, right? They need a star on offense, and they need a star on defense. Now, Jonathan Isaac could be that star on defense, but still, they don't have either, and depending on where they go in this draft, they may get one, but they might risk just not being able to get the other. Now, I guess the best combo of the two could be Wendell Carter Jr., who's just kind of good on both sides, and he could give you more spacing than Vucevic and also better defense than Vucevic. But I think the risk with that one is he may be safer than Trey Young and Mo Bamba, but if either one of those guys hit, then they could be really something. Like Bamba could be the type of guy who takes your defense from wherever Orlando was this year. They were 18th, and he could transform you into like the 9th best defensive team. Potentially, Trey Young, if he hits, could take you from 25th in offense to like 13th. Whereas Wendell Carter Jr., you could make a decent improvement with both, but I mean, we've seen in the NBA that becoming elite, or at least getting closer to being elite on one side of the floor, and then gradually building up the other side, it can work. I mean, we saw it with Houston. They went from offense and then built up the defense. We're seeing it with Utah right now, the effects of being a great defensive team. So maybe that'll be the better way to go about it for the Magic. I think another element to all this is Aaron Gordon's free agency. I think the previous front office would have matched anything for Gordon, so if someone else threw a max contract offer, they would have matched it. I think the new regime with John Hammond and Jeff Weltman, I don't think they have as much sentimental value for Gordon just because he's not their guy. And if they feel like there's a chance that he's not going to be on the team in the future, that'll definitely influence their pick. And I think the most obvious one would be you move Jonathan Isaac to the 4 and then you don't feel as bad about potentially drafting Bamba, because then it's like you could put a shooter at the 3 spot, you know? Like if your options are either Isaac, Gordon, Bamba, and some potentially rough spacing, or like insert backcourt, Evan Fournier at the 3, Isaac at 4, Bamba at 5, your spacing could be better, you know? But I think there's a decent chance that Gordon is still on this team anyway, because I don't think he's going to get like a humongous contract offer from some other team. I did think about Mikal Bridges for like 2 seconds with them, but for him to work out the best, he's got to either really develop his ball handling, or you need creators around him, and this team just doesn't really have that. And after you re-sign Gordon, if you were to, and then after you were potentially re-sign Hazonia, you don't really have the cap space to get a point guard at that point, so Mikal may not be the best for them. So I feel like they have like 3 choices here between Trey Young to jumpstart their offense. I guess technically Colin Sexton as well could serve that as well. He doesn't have the shooting that Trey Young does. Or it's Mo Bamba to get the defense really on the right track. Of course, then you have to deal with the Vucevic situation of, you know, if Bamba just becomes better than Vucevic, what do you do there? And then, you know, I guess you could try to meet in the middle with like Wendell Carter Jr. So, interesting things for the Magic. We'll see what they do. And then once again, new podcast. Previewing both Game 7s and just going over those series in general. And then Amir Van, Brockhampton, and I'm done.